5 Saturdays from now for the first football game. Good afternoon, I'm Quinn Kelly, and I serve as the president of the Graduate Student Association. And welcome to today's GROW panels. I'm happy to see you here. I am also a native of Tuscaloosa. For those of you who are new to the city, welcome to my hometown. Who was here yesterday for the GTA training? Oh man, I can't give the same speech I gave yesterday then. Will the executive board members of GSA who are in the room please stand and wave to the crowd? So these are the people that I want you to get to know and hopefully get to work with this year as we extend an invitation for you to serve alongside the Graduate Student Association. So you will see invitations in your email inbox and through Instagram. But without further ado, it is an honor to introduce Dr. Stuart Bell, the president of the University of Alabama. He couldn't be here today, but he did send a message. So here we go.
Hi, I'm Dr. Stuart Bell, President of the University of Alabama, and it is my privilege to welcome you to the capstone and to share in your orientation experience. I'm proud of the leadership in the Graduate School and the Graduate School Association for organizing this orientation to help your transition as a new member of the UA community. Today, you'll be provided with a comprehensive view of what to expect during this new phase of your academic career. You'll also hear from current students and faculty, so lean in and listen as they share what has worked well for them. They will have some great advice. We're so glad you selected UA, a championship school and the place where legends are made. Graduate school is an important step for your future, and many of our over 150 master's educational specialists and doctoral degree programs are nationally recognized for their excellence. Companies pursue our alumni because they have seen the quality of our graduate programs in the workplace, and they want more employees like our UA graduates. You enrolled as a graduate student because you felt a call to do more, to be more, to push yourself academically and professionally. I'm proud of your determination and desire to grow in your respective fields. Through your diligent efforts and the expertise of our talented faculty, you will transform your professional career path. I wish you all the best as you begin this new journey. Take advantage of every opportunity UA provides. Push yourself to even greater heights. Above all, know that our faculty and staff are here to support you from your first class until we celebrate with you at commencement. Enjoy your orientation, have a great semester, and of course, roll Tide.
At this time, I would like to introduce the Associate Dean for Admissions, Recruitment, and Fellowships, Dr. Andrew Goodliff. Let's give him a round of applause.
All right, thanks, Quinn. It is so wonderful to see so many students here today. I know in the event last night and today, I've had a great time putting some faces to some names when you've come up and said hi. I also want to welcome our students joining via Zoom. We do have some students joining remotely to our event today. You're coming to the University of Alabama at a key time in our history. We're seeing really tremendous growth in graduate enrollment. In fact, today, the graduate enrollment is higher than it's ever been. 5,891 graduate students enrolled. If we can take it past 6,000 next week, we're having a celebration in grad school, I can tell you that. So this large growth in graduate education at UA has been made possible by an investment in students, faculty, and infrastructure. And this is one of the reasons I love working here, because the administration is fully committed to graduate education and the research mission. In fact, since 2003, $2.1 billion has been spent on infrastructure. This includes such areas as the Science and Engineering Quad, got some amazing world-class facilities, and most recently, we just opened the new Houston Hall, which is the home of part of the business school. Now, graduate education at UA has a very long history. As some of you may know, UA was founded in 1831. We actually granted our first master's degree in 1832. So very, very shortly after that. Now, it took us a while longer to grant that first PhD. First PhD was granted in 1950. But today, we have more than 150 graduate programs. Now, growing the research and our growing the research population and our graduate school population is a mission of every R1 university, and it's really central to our mission. Now, why is graduate education important? As a grad student, you are a creator of knowledge, you're an innovator. If we look at the typical grad class, it's students working with faculty, it's people working in teams, it's a very different style to undergrad. So you're going to be creating knowledge. If we look at our research grad students are key to the mission of the university. They're driving that research mission. They're the ones doing the everyday research that we're so well known for. We cannot do this without the graduate students. Our students are making discoveries and innovating. They're on the cutting edge of fields such as human-computer interaction, electric vehicle technology, business analytics, water research, and this is just to name a few. If we look at our professional graduate students, those who are in MBAs, specialized master's programs, these are people who have they're enhancing their career, they're growing their earning potential, and they're going to be starting out on a higher rung in industry. Now, also when we look at graduate education, it has a huge economic impact. The Alabama Council of Graduate Deans did a study on this back in 2012. And in 2012, out of the 10,603 graduate students earning degrees throughout the state of Alabama, we calculated that those people would earn an additional $5.2 billion over what they would have with just a bachelor's degree. Now, 64% of the grad students earning graduate degrees in Alabama actually stay in Alabama after graduation. And this boosts the economy of Alabama by about $3.4 billion. So the economic impact is amazing. Now, I want to ask a couple of quick questions of the audience. So put your hands up if, like Quinn, you're from Alabama. You don't have to be just from Tuscaloosa, but from Alabama. Okay, so a small number of folks from Alabama. All right, kind of redundant question next. From out of state. All right, so we see by far the majority of you are from out of state. Now, what about those, put up their hands if they've traveled more than 3,000 miles to be here from their home? Wow, that's a lot of people. That's amazing. That's wonderful. Now, next, I want you to put up your hand if you consider yourself not a typical graduate student. Maybe you've been out in the real world, whatever the real world is, I haven't quite worked that out. Or you're older, you've got kids, that sort of thing. So put up your hand if you consider yourself a non-traditional student. There's quite a few of you. This is good. Now, I want to tell you the average age of a UA student is 32. So, it's very different to our undergraduate populations. Now, in the grad school, over the next year, you're going to learn one of our missions is to bring the different disciplines together. We want you to get out of your corner of the campus and actually meet other people. So I just want you to take like a minute or two to introduce yourself to 3 other people in the room. Can be the people behind you, in front of you, but just take a minute just to introduce yourselves, tell them what your program is, where you're from, etc. Yeah. All right, we'll give you about 30 more seconds. All right, if you can find your seat again, that'd be great. So what we want to see over the next year is a lot of you reaching out of your disciplines, meeting other people. This is really a key goal for us. Okay, I am actually going to hand the microphone back to Quinn, and he will continue with his emceeing duties. Thank you, and welcome to UA. Roll Tide.
Y'all are getting good at that roll tide thing. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce the Vice President and Associate Provost for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at the University of Alabama, Dr. Christine Taylor. Please give her a round of applause.
Good morning. I hope all of you are doing well, and I am glad to join our colleagues in the graduate school in welcoming you to graduate work here. I remember when I went back to graduate school, let me just be a little self-disclosing and give some timetables. I was a real grown adult. I had worked professionally and I was working in Houston, Texas at the time. And when I went back to graduate school, we had those floppy disks. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? To be honest, I had never worked on a computer until I got to grad school. And I remember one night doing one of those all-nighters. And let me just tell you, don't do that. And I did an all-nighter, writing a paper. And then it said, do you want to save? And I said, no. And then I'm in the floor and I called my grandmother. I said, Nana, you cannot believe what happened. I stayed up all night writing this paper and it asked me if I wanted to save. And I said, no. She said, maybe if you're nice to the computer, it'll give it back to you. And we all agreed that was not going to work out very well. But the University of Alabama is a fabulous institution, and I'm so excited that you're here with us. In my area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have 4 major goals. And I'm going to be sending some information to you from our office. So when you receive something from diversity at ua.edu, please take a look at it, and you'll have an option to opt out of the mailers that we send out to the campus. But our 4 areas are to increase representation, the retention and the graduation of diverse students, to increase the number of our diverse faculty and staff, to make sure that everybody on our campus feels welcome, that this is a place that they feel that they can thrive and not merely survive, and that also this is a campus in which we are all learning cultural competencies. Because the truth of the matter is that all of us, not some of us, all of us are going to find ourselves working in an increasingly diverse and global society. This morning before coming over, I was quickly looking at the news and thinking about the horrific earthquake that's just happened in Haiti and the possibility that they're going to have a tsunami after it. Also thinking about the demographic changes that we've had in this nation. I raise these because these all present grand challenges that we are going to require and need minds like yours to be engaged in solving. I love the fact that Dr. Andrew talked about you're now being information creators, because that's a real shift from the undergraduate experience where you consume. At this point, we're looking for you not to only consume, but also create knowledge that helps us to solve some of our grand challenges. Just even the COVID vaccine, we need your intellectual power to help us solve those. So I would encourage you to enter this graduate experience thinking about the creation of knowledge that you're going to offer to the world that will begin to help us solve problems. While you're in the graduate program, I know, how many people use LinkedIn or are familiar with LinkedIn, networking? Okay, fabulous. Make sure that you link in here in purpose and on purpose. When I was in graduate school, my best friend was a woman. I have since lost her to breast cancer, but she was a woman from Accra, Ghana, West Africa, and I went home with her for the weekend. It wasn't a weekend, obviously. I went home with her for the Christmas holiday. That experience so enriched my life, and it opened me to so much more. Make it your business to make sure that you know and meet someone here that is not like anyone that you ever worked with or met before. That enriches the way you look at the world, the way you look at yourself, the way you look at your research. We have 2 particular spaces that I want to draw your attention to. Last year, as we were in the COVID experience, our office produces a lot of programming to enhance your cultural knowledge. And here's something that a lot of people probably have not considered or thought about, is that as you're getting ready to move and work into these spaces, what we're hearing from many, many people in the business world is that we want people that can come in and work with folks that are different than themselves. Trust me, you do not gain that knowledge by simply getting a one-shot diversity inoculation. It doesn't work like that. You really have got to practice working with folks that may not share your belief system, that may have cultural differences, that may see the world profoundly different than yourself. One of the ways you can do that is through the myriad of programs that we offer through our Intercultural Diversity Center and our Safe Zone Center. Both of them are located in the Ferguson Center on the 2nd floor. If you get near the food courts, then you're almost there. In that Intercultural Diversity Center, we call it a place for cultural learning, sharing, and growing. And the Safe Zone Center is a space that we have to provide support for our faculty, staff, students, and allies of the LGBTQIA community. It's also on the 2nd floor of the Ferguson Center. We encourage you to learn and to take advantage of all that's there. And again, when we send out our follow-up to this event to let you know more about what we're doing, you'll get a chance to learn about that. Now, I want to share with you, anybody here do prom? Amazon prom? Okay, I'm big on prom. But let me tell you how I got to prom, and then that'll lead into where I want to go. When I worked at another institution, my business manager was a Caucasian woman, and we would come, and she'd come in and talk about business stuff. And then one day she said, "Have you ever done prom?" I said, "What is prom?" She said, "Amazon prom." And I knew nothing about this. She turned me on to how Amazon prom worked. So then it was like, "Girl, what did you get last weekend?" "Well, I got this, I got that." We no longer work in the same place. It's been about 7 or 8 years later, But she just texted me right before this spring's Amazon Prime and said, "What are you looking for?" And I told her. She said, "I'll keep my eyes out." I said, "Thank you." The thing is that Lisa and I were able to build a relationship around Prime. Now you think, whatever, but it was key. It saved me a lot. But when it was a time to have conversations about serious issues that may have dealt with something around race or diversity or sexual orientation, Lisa felt more comfortable talking with me and I with her because we had an authentic relationship about something that had nothing to do with that. It wasn't fueled by the crisis. Ours was fueled by Prime. I'm saying that to say to you, to build relationships, authentic relationships with others so that you can bring your total authentic self to the table. They can bring their total authentic self to the table because we're at a point in this nation and in the world that we need to be able to talk and converse with people that are different, but you've got to practice doing that. It does not just happen. So now to my Amazon Prime deal. For those of you who are not from Alabama, I shared with the group yesterday about the aesthetics of bless my heart or bless your heart. You've heard that phrase, right? So bless your heart could mean bless your heart could mean bless my heart could mean, okay, it's gonna work out. So all of these phrases have different cultural frameworks, and I wanna give you a new one. From Amazon, my shirt just got here last night. I tore the bag open before coming over here. My shirt says, "Nope, not today, not tomorrow either." Now, for my cultural framework, that means don't bring nothing crazy. It won't be nothing crazy happening. Don't start it up with me. But as I think about your graduate school experience, here's how I'd like you to carry this mantra forward if you choose. Nope, not today, nor tomorrow either. Nope, not today. Don't doubt your capacity to be successful in your academic program. And don't doubt it tomorrow. Nope, not today, nor tomorrow either. Should you doubt the contributions that you can make to the world stage, not today, nor tomorrow. If you hear somebody who says something that is offensive to others, that is offensive to you, nope, not today, let them know, and let it not happen tomorrow. As you are here on the campus, hold this in your mind. Nope, not today, and not tomorrow. Constantly find ways to reaffirm yourself. I know when I went to grad school, I had a lot of friends who really didn't understand that graduate thing. They kept saying, "You've been to school for 12 years. I mean, what else do you want to do? You know, no, this is what they said to me. You should make yourself busy finding someone to marry." What? I told you I was old. Don't, just work with me. That was a big thing during my time. But what I'm saying is there may be some people who may not understand your journey, and you still want to know them, you still want to love them, you still want to have them as your life. But to listen to that chatter, no, not today, nor tomorrow either. All that to say is to guard yourself, protect yourself, support yourself, surround yourself with people who have like thinking, like wishes, like goals. And please help me to make the University of Alabama a more welcoming and inclusive community by making sure at all times that when you hear things or see things that are not supporting of our institutional goals, that you say, nope, not today, nor tomorrow either. Our offices are on the second floor, again, of the FERG. My personal office is in Rose Administration. We're the building behind the big green elephant. And we're on the third floor. We're available. You can reach us at diversity@ua.edu. And we are so glad to have you here. We want to do everything that we can to support you in all that you do here. And I conclude with, nope, not today, nor tomorrow either. Bless all our hearts. And obviously, roll tide. Thank you.
Bless your heart, Dr. Taylor. That's so great. At this time, we are going to welcome our boss, the Associate Provost and the Dean of the Graduate School, Dr. Susan Carvalho.
Bless your heart, Quinn. It's really great to have you all here. You know, it was so, I don't know how to describe the feeling when you see all of these applications rolling by all spring and you wonder, will this one get here? Will that one get here? And to see you all who have made it here, congratulations to all of you. I think you chose UA because you wanted to work with some amazing leaders in your field. And I know that you've been on their websites, you've read what they do, and you said, this person can get me to where I want to go. But remember that they did the same thing with those applications. They chose you because you're the catalyst to their work. And not only do they choose you for this fall, but they chose UA because UA would bring them students like you, the graduate students who can be the catalysts to their work. So as Andy Goodliff mentioned, you are co-creating with them, but when they come to interview at UA, they ask, how are the graduate students? Because they know that their productivity depends on how rich your contributions are to them. So glad you're here. And if you have any self-doubt, remember that we chose you because we know you can do it. I also want to thank Andy Goodliff and his team for organizing today. Entry is hard, adapting is hard, whether you're adapting to the US, to Tuscaloosa, to UA, or to graduate education. I know you're full of questions, and we'll have time to address some of those today, but the team that put this together really wants to make it easier for you, to make that big step just a little bit smaller and more doable. So thank you so much. And I have to say one more thank you. Andy and his team implemented the application system that you all used this year. And I know you don't know how much better it is than the one before, but I think you'll agree that it was pretty easy, that some of you could do it on your phone. Writing those essays is hard, but actually submitting them, not so hard. So thank you, Andy, for all that you've done to make this possible. So Andy mentioned that this is not the old Alabama. There was a time when we opened a new building every 70 days. There was a ribbon cutting on a new building. And how many of you watch TikTok or scroll through TikTok? So you're familiar with hashtag Bama Rush? So I was doing some deep dives on Bama Rush last night. This is a phenomenon that has overtaken TikTok. So TikTok runs by algorithms and you don't control what appears in your feed, right? But at some point, for some sin you committed, Bama Rush has taken over your TikTok. And not only your TikTok, but the Bama Rush videos this week have 60 million views. 60 million views. So I've spent it last evening trying to figure out if this is good for UA's brand or not good for UA's brand. Because that 60 million cannot be local. That's all over the world that people are figuring out. So what the sorority students are doing is auditioning to get into the sorority or social club of their choice. And they're making TikTok videos to tell you what they're wearing, which sounds boring, but 60 million people don't find it boring. And so they tell you where they got their jewelry, where they got their shoes, in case you want to be just like them. People are theorizing that's all one girl. Because there's a sameness to them. But I invite you to, no, I'll tell you, it's dangerous to go down that rabbit hole. I'll just say that. So co-creating knowledge isn't easy. Co-creating TikTok isn't easy either, but we want to make it possible for you to reach for the stars. And so I just want to tell you a couple of recent examples from last year of graduate students doing amazing things. We have a doctoral student in material science, Sharnice, who landed grants from NASA and 2 different NSF programs to enhance her funding for her last few years of graduate school. And that launched her into a top academic job at Washington University in St. Louis. When those funding opportunities come up, those are not to be scrolled past. Those are to be considered because you will be equipped with the knowledge to be successful. And those grants not only bring you money now, but they get you jobs later. A recent geology student, Christine, who had an undergraduate degree in anthropology and combined those 2 fields in a unique way in her doctoral research, got a fellowship from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, Sea Grant Marine Policy Fellowship, and is now helping create marine policy in Washington, D.C. Catherine, a biology master's student, got a Fulbright to spend a year in Poland studying antibiotic resistance. UA is one of the top Fulbright granting institutions in the US. So it helps you to apply for a Fulbright if you're from UA. That success is also a catalytic formula. So watch for those. UA has won NASA's grand prize in robotics mining for 5 consecutive years. UA students this year won first place in the EcoCar Mobility Challenge. And our communications master's student, Elroy Johnson, won the Best Student Film Award for his documentary at the DC Black Film Festival this year. Those are all amazing feats of national and international prominence, and that's what we hope for from you. And to that end, there will be opportunities for professional development, guidance, and also funding. There are some words you'll want to listen for as a graduate student: free food and funding. Those are the emails that you read. We lament a lot that graduate students don't read their email. We could send that out, but graduate students don't read email. We say it a lot, but I'll tell you what, I put out an email last year that offered funding for just to go to a conference on educational technology in Northern Alabama. It wasn't like Crete, it was Northern Alabama, and I was flooded. And I said, people do read emails when they have funding in them, and also free food. So watch for those. But that funding will enable you to go to a professional conference and present your research. We don't actually fund you to go to the conference and watch. We fund you to go to the conference and present your work alongside the experts in your field. And so you can do that once a year. We'll provide you with $1,000 for that and more if it's an international trip. So that's there waiting for you. Take advantage of it when the opportunity comes along. Ask your professors if your paper is good enough to present at a conference, or what you would need to do to get that paper ready to present at a conference. Watch for the opportunity. Make sure it's in a cool place that you wanted to visit anyway. Ask for the money, and we will get you there. Why? Because your job, our goal, is not only for you to create knowledge, but to disseminate it, to address those grand challenges. And moreover, when you're doing that, it's a better promotion of our brand than TikTok, even if it doesn't get 60 million views. So your success is our success. We have workshops to help you get there. We have funding to help you get there. We have the speaking studio and the writing studio and publisher in residence workshops to help you get there. And we look forward to greeting you as you get there. So I just want to say one more thing about these support structures around you, just to explain a little bit of who does what in graduate education. So I would say these are the 4 big pieces of your support system. Your department chair, that's the role you're probably all pretty familiar with. Program director, advisor, graduate school. And how do these fit together? So the department chair is the person that the faculty all report to, and probably the most knowledgeable person about policies that might affect you. The department chair is also your employer if you have an assistantship. So that's the person who hires and knows how many slots there are and has something to do often with who's teaching what. Department chairs report to your college dean. But you also have someone who is probably going to be closer to your lives than the department chair, and that's the graduate program director. There's at least one in every department, and that's the person who's the strongest liaison with the graduate school and is probably most up on what do you need to do to graduate. It's a title that rotates, so you'll need to find out who that is. It's probably the person who coordinated your admission, but might not be the person who decided on your admission. But the program director is a faculty member who also has a day job besides being program director. So they're busy people, but you can find them, you can catch them, you can ask them the questions that you need to know about what you need to do to graduate. And they also tend to know how funding works in your department. Then, eventually, if not initially, you'll have an advisor. So the advisor is the person closest to your subspecialization, the person who will guide your master's thesis or guide your dissertation. So different departments have different chronological points when you choose an advisor. If you don't have to choose one right away, don't choose one right away. Take some classes, talk to people, get to know them, because finding the right advisor has a lot of chemistry in it. You need to find the person whose mind works somewhat the way your mind works, who you feel is supportive, who has faith that you will, your idea will come to fruition, or who will help you mold that idea into something that will come to fruition. So if you have time to shop for an advisor, take that time and shop for an advisor. In other fields, especially if you came in for a doctoral degree, you already have an advisor, and that gives you a head start on your doctoral research, because right out of the gate, you can start planning, tailoring your course selection around your doctoral plan. So there are advantages to waiting, and there are advantages to having an advisor right away. But even if you have an advisor, the program director is still the person who knows all the rules about what you need to do to graduate. The advisor is your subject matter expert, but the program director is the policy expert, the rules expert. So keep those in mind. You don't leave one behind when you have the other. But if you don't have an advisor, then the graduate program director is your advisor until you choose one. And then what does the graduate school do? I often tell people that I went through graduate school, and I got a master's, I got a PhD, and I don't know if there was a graduate school at my university. I honestly don't remember ever going there or ever hearing of them, but of course we didn't have email, and we had a few mimeograph things that we didn't read because they didn't have funding or free food. But we're here, and we're a little more visible than maybe the one was where I went. And we are the place that marks your milestones, when you're done with your classes. What do you have left to do? When did you defend your thesis proposal? Are you ready to graduate? We check you in on the admissions side, we check you out on the graduation side, and we're there to provide you with opportunities along the way. So your department will also provide discipline-specific opportunities. You should take advantage of those. Some departments have more, some departments have fewer, but the graduate school will provide this kind of superstructure of activities like how to deal with self-doubt and imposter syndrome, how to manage your time better, how to deal with pandemic stress, all kinds of support that not only can feed your mind, feed your soul, but also help you meet people outside your department, which gets increasingly difficult. You know, you will soon go into your little world of your department, and it can be hard to break out, but it can be suffocating to stay in. So the graduate school tries to, and the GSA, try to provide you with opportunities to connect outside your discipline in authentic ways. So that's all I have to say. Except that we are here for you. Your success is our success. We'll meet you on the commencement stage and hopefully many times between here and there. Roll Tide.
So GSA will now title all of our emails free food or funding, even if it does not offer those things. We will now break until about 1:47 p.m. Please make sure that you introduce yourself to other students and work on completing this bingo card. We will have a drawing for a prize at 3:30 p.m., so make sure that you drop off your bingo card to the table with the GSA officers at the front. And I will see you. Make sure you are back in your seat at 1:47. All right.
Hey, buddy. How's it going? Just say it's great. I know. Hang on.
You probably want the slide number to show. We do, but not them. My time is showing 1:47. Hi, welcome. I'll take it. I sure will. Okay, sounds good. You'll have to tag. I was gonna say tag me. I will definitely do that. Thank you. Can I get a roll tide? Can I get a roll tide? If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. If you can hear me, scream roll tide. There we go. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I would now like to introduce Royce Dickerson, the Executive Vice President of the Graduate Student Association and a student in our MBA program. Royce will moderate the faculty panel this afternoon. Let's give Royce a round of applause.
Thank you, President Kelly. All right. We're going to get to the point within our orientation that's a little bit more interactive, and that's going to be our faculty panel. So we want to hear your questions and get those answered. We have a great group of faculty members with us this afternoon, and so this is really your chance to ask those questions. And in a way that we can make sure we maximize our time here, we're going to do it in more of a setting where you can text in your questions. So feel free to get those questions ready, and you can text those to 205-469-8415. And we'll be taking your questions all throughout this Q&A. And so if you ask them and text them all right now, or we get through the middle of the faculty Q&A and you have a question, feel free to text those to that number all throughout the presentation, and you can see that number at the bottom of the slide. So as we're getting those questions ready, go ahead and start texting those. Judges, we'd like, not judges. Maybe we'll judge you on who can pose the best question. But we'd like our faculty to represent themselves and actually present themselves to the group for us today. So if you all could do a round of introductions, of course, stating your name, your department, and this is maybe a brief couple of information about you, just so our group knows who you all are. We'll begin right here.
Let's try that again.
There we go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Heather Carmack. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Communication Studies over in the College of Communication and Information Sciences. My specialty areas are patient-provider communication. So if you're interested in health, if you're interested in being a provider of any kind, even if you're not in communication, please come chat with me.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sabrina Jackson. I am the MSW Program Director, Masters of Social Work Program Director here. I'm an assistant professor as well, and would love to talk to you about our graduate program. We also have a Doctorate of Social Work program and a PhD program in social work. So would love to talk to you about any of those programs as well, and glad to be here with you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marco Bonitzoni. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry here at UA, and I'm also the director of graduate admissions and recruiting for the department. I'm an organic chemist by trade with interest in analytical chemistry, for those of you that might be interested. And I would like to join everybody in welcoming you here to the UA campus for this year.
Hello, everybody. My name is James Mcnaughton. I'm a professor in the English department and the director of graduate studies there. In the English, we offer MA, PhD, and MFA degrees. We have about 130 graduate students, and I'll be answering questions from that perspective. It's nice to see you all.
Hi, everyone. I am Professor Mark Weaver from the Department of Metallurgical and Materials Engineering. I work on metals that are used above 1,000 degrees Celsius. If you're interested in that, come and see me. I'm from Seattle, Washington. It's good to have you here.
Hey everybody, my name is David Cruzudibe. I'm chairman of the Department of Mathematics, professor there specializing in analysis and PDEs, words which mean nothing except to the handful of math graduate students. Yeah, right. Real shout out though, from the last name, I am Mexicano. Are there any Mexicanos, Chicanos, Latinos here? All right, let's hear some representation.
All right, well, thank you panelists for being here. We have a lot of departments represented, so we appreciate you taking the time. And we do have questions already rolling in, and so our first question for our panelists, and you all can all answer that, or you can pick and choose who would like to answer one, just depending on the nature of the question. But what do you think graduate students experience and struggle with the most, and how do you think they can overcome that? And we're not talking about parking, but specifically within academics. What struggles do graduate students go through, and any advice you have with that?
Well, I can go first. I was just turning it on, so it's on.
I'll go first with that. In my experience, lots of graduate students suffer from imposter syndrome because you've suddenly been thrown into an environment with a lot of really smart people, and you're convinced that they are all smarter than you, quicker than you, probably better looking than you, well, except maybe in math. And you feel out of place. You feel like you don't belong. And you'll interpret every sharp comment from a faculty member, every possibly condescending remark from some other idiot in your program in light of this. Well, as the dean of the graduate school said, we picked you to come to graduate school here. So always remember that. And in some sense, don't worry about imposter syndrome. You're fooling them. Okay, so if you think you're an imposter, remember, you're fooling them, and you've gotten away with it this long, and there's no reason you can't get away with it for the rest of your career. And when I say the rest of your career, a couple years ago, I was thinking about making a major move in my own career, and I was talking to a colleague of mine, and I was expressing self-doubt. So I don't know if I'm really good enough to do this. Is this, am I really up to this? And he cut me cold, and he just looked at me and said, David, have you read your Vita lately? And what could I say to that? Okay. So yeah, it might be there in the background through your whole career. It is what it is. Don't let it slow you down from doing what you can do.
Thanks, Anna. I think I'll share as well. We talk to our students a lot in social work about self-care. And I've seen graduate students really struggle in that place because you have so much on your plate. There's so many great opportunities. There's so much work you're engaged in. And sometimes we forget to put ourselves on the calendar. So I encourage you on the front end of this process to make sure you prioritize some time for you to just kind of, I call it nothing heavy kind of time where you take care of yourself in the midst of all the wonderful things you're gonna do, all the research you're gonna engage in, all the activities you're gonna take part of. Make sure that you put time on your calendar for yourself to take care of you so that you finish this process. You go through this process well, and you finish this process well. So self-care is my number one thing I'd recommend for you.
Mine's sort of similar to self-care. It's that it's okay to say no to an opportunity. You're going to be presented with tons of opportunities. And if you say yes to everything, you're going to get burnt out. You're going to find that you have no time for yourself. You're going to find that you don't have time to do your classes. So you can choose to be a little picky, and that's okay. And I'm not saying, like, oh, I'm too good to say yes to something. But know what your boundaries are, and know that you don't have to say yes to every opportunity that's presented to you. And you're not going to be missing out. I know FOMO is a whole thing. You're not going to be missing out on opportunities if you say, 6 professors want you to work on a research project. Don't say yes to all 6 professors. Say no to at least probably 4 of them.
I think that's some great advice. We have one more?
I think most of the topics have been covered. Certainly self-care is a really important one. Another important one is finding a group of friends, essentially, a group of people that are going through the same experience that you are, and kind of finding your village in a way. So find yourself as a group of people that you're going to, when things don't go your way, when you hit a wall, if you're doing research, for instance, most of the stuff that you'll do fails by design, pretty much. And you're going to have to kind of get used to it. And so segueing from that, also get used to the idea that some of the things that you'll try will not work out. And that's absolutely okay. And it's built in the program, and there's nothing wrong with that. And you just kind of have to deal with it. We here have just learned to deal with that. That's all there is to it. We're not doing it less, better or anything. We're just capable of dealing with failure, that's all. And so that's one of the things that you might want to learn.
One thing that I find, particularly in engineering, is students struggle with the transition from undergraduate school to graduate school. And they're not the same thing. What I always advise students to do is to look at graduate school as your profession and as a job. And part of that, it has several cogs that are important parts of it. Part of it is you're taking classes. Part of it is you're doing research in order to progress forward towards ultimately the degree that you're seeking. So sort of readjusting in your mind the way you look at school actually will help you do a much more effective job in completing the tasks that you're undertaking. And so, I don't like the name graduate school. I prefer some sort of postgraduate training, if you will, because that's what this really is.
I'm just going to add a little bit to all this wisdom up here, and maybe at the tail end of it. But really, one of the things we're talking about in a way is time management, I suppose, as well. How you're going to balance the demands that you have. A lot of people will look at you because you're in graduate school and think you're not working because you're doing research, or you're only in class a couple hours a week, or whatever it might be, and they'll assume that you're free to pick them up at the airport, you're free to look after their kids, you're free to do, so make sure that when you're thinking about your time that you actually treat it, just to pick up on this, like you schedule in your time for your research and your writing, that you find a good place where you can work early, find a spot, whether it's in your apartment or in the library or however, I'm thinking more for the humanities end maybe here, but the 6th floor of the library is very quiet, it's good, nice place to get work done, it stays open late. Find one of those spots for yourself so you can have a place where you go and get your work done. And you can tell other people, I'm actually at work right now, I'm not doing this. The other thing I'll add is just thinking about the imposter syndrome, and I agree with everything that's been said wholeheartedly. Remember to speak up in class, if you've got something to contribute. This is one of the, if imposter syndrome is the ailment, the symptoms are oftentimes a kind of shyness, or an unwillingness to go by professors' office hours to seek out help and so on. Make sure you do those things. And I don't mean just send an email, I mean go in person. Those office hours are set aside for you. They're a good way to network. You're going to need someone to write you letters of recommendation. You're going to need someone who's going to help you if you're in a master's level, get into a PhD program. You need to build those connections. Go in and use that time wisely, talk about the research that you're interested in, and so on and so forth. So I'd encourage you to do that as well, as an extension of that imposter syndrome. Thanks.
Leading off that, we're talking about our network and the support that you have to have while you're here on campus. Graduate students, they might have been in Tuscaloosa for 4 years, 4 months, or even some 4 days. How do you find that community on campus, whether you're new or whether you've been here? What's the best way to meet people on campus, whether it's in your program or just around Tuscaloosa? Any advice that you have for that?
There's jokes up here going on, like, why are you asking academics for advice on social life? Like, you know, probably you all are much better at that than maybe we are. But meeting people like your cohort, I think that advice has already been given, right? That seems like a good place to begin, is getting to know the people who are going through the same things as you, who are researching in similar areas, and so on and so forth. That's a nice place to begin. But it's also nice to make friends outside of your department as well, because it can be a release, and it might not have all the energies of that competition that can sometimes be there in certain departments. But that's not great advice. Structurally, like the bars, I don't know. I mean, like.
I kind of think you need to try to do things that are related to hobbies that you may have, and never give up your hobbies. When I was in graduate school, I was a big long distance runner. And so there were running clubs, and I met a lot of friends, or made a lot of friends through those types of clubs. I played basketball at the gym with some guys regularly and made a lot of friends and additional friends that way. I had a dog. I took the dog to the dog park. Met a lot of folks that way, you know, and it's sort of those not structured things, I guess, if you will. I think that's the best way of doing things. Maybe through church, if you go to church, that's always a good one as well. But centering things about, or trying to find folks that are doing things that you like to do or have similar interests, I think, you know, that's what I've always done. And when I was a graduate student, I was painfully shy. I mean, so badly that I had to actually see someone to deal with those issues. So it was tough. But I think if you focus on what you enjoy doing, you're gonna meet people that way. At least this worked for me.
Your department is a great place to go, but I will say if the graduate GSA is hosting an event, social event, go to that. Thank you. They didn't pay me to say that. I met so many, I mean, because you make a lot of friends in your cohort and your program, but I was never, where our building was, where I went to graduate school, we weren't near any other building. So the only time I met other graduate students was when I went to our university's graduate student council events, so that I met all these different people from all these different programs. So please go to those. I'm really not being paid to say that, but I appreciate it. Who doesn't love free food?
That's definitely a great piece of advice. You know, the graduate school and the GSA are oftentimes hosting events, and this is a chance to meet people in your program, outside of your program, and graduate students. And the best way to do that is just to follow these groups on Instagram. So maybe a little subtle plug, but of course follow the graduate school at UA Graduate School, but also GSA, ua.gsa 1831. So little plug, thank you for that. So a little bit more specific, when it comes to a PhD program, what's the expectation for departments and the publishing quotas?
That'll be wildly different department by department.
Okay.
So that is one of those things that probably also is different within disciplines inside the same department. Some things just take time, and some things have a shorter time to publication. So I would say that you're probably going to be best advised by your actual advisor at that point, when it gets to that point. Generally speaking, though, publishing is, in many ways, publishing, disseminating, talking about the stuff that you find out is the ultimate goal. So never kind of let your eyes wander from that particular prize, because it's something that measures your impact from what you've done in graduate school.
definitely agree with that in terms of just how different it is from department to department. I think as we think about our students in social work, we're constantly talking about it, particularly those who know they want to leave us and go into have an academic career. We're talking to them about the type of institution where they'd like to become an assistant professor, and just kind of thinking about what, in terms of their publication record and research and experience they need to have to be prepared for that particular institution. We know it's different in social work, it's different from a teaching institution versus R1. So just kind of talking to our students about their career goals and in terms of just what's next after the doctoral program, and working with an advisor to help them to do the things that they need to do in terms of publishing and research to get to that goal. And even within social work, it varies depending on where the student wants to go after finishing our program. But I would just say start early in kind of researching, having conversations with faculty, your advisor. Start early having those conversations so that you can kind of get started with that process.
If you're in engineering, the goal is always to publish your work. And so every plan that you make should culminate in the end in a publication. Because we look at it in terms of training, you're going to be writing reports the rest of your life, no matter what you go into, whether you go into academia, you go into industry, you go work in a national laboratory. So that writing of technical papers helps you in that preparation process. We always target everything towards you need to publish. In the engineering disciplines also, there's a requirement of a certain number. So a PhD dissertation, for example, it's 3. That's the minimum, you have to do it. So that also kind of helps to focus you on the goal at the end of the day. Other disciplines, of course, are going to vary.
I just chime in for the humanities a bit. In our discipline, in a PhD level, you would actually start with the master's level. When you write your thesis, you have an option of doing a thesis or exams, but you can do a thesis that's geared towards publication already, and write a thesis that's a little shorter, but it's going to be geared towards a particular journal. So that's built into that program, and other programs will be similar. At the PhD level, it's the same. I mean, if you're thinking about publication, you should think about conferences, presenting the work, getting professional feedback, making connections that way. Sometimes editors of journals will be in the room while you're presenting because they're interested in a particular topic in the humanities, and they'll approach you afterwards. Those kind of things happen. Or someone's putting together a book collection, they'll approach you. So getting used to those small steps, maybe even starting with a small conference that's maybe more regional, and then beginning to build up. That's a nice way to sort of get yourself in the humanities, in towards publishing. And then, of course, in the PhD level, at least in the English department, we have classes that take a seminar paper and then help you shape it into an article for publication. So there's professional training in that very thing, and you'll find that, I'm sure, in other humanities departments as well.
I just want to add to this that in all disciplines, science and humanities, good writing skills are absolutely fundamental. And I think the bane on every discipline is shitty writing. I'll just say it flat out. I'm an editor for a journal. I've been a referee for papers for 30 years. And the number of papers whose ideas are first rate but are written in turgid, incomprehensible prose is mind-numbing. So you can really carve a place for yourself in your discipline by mastering good, clear, coherent writing.
Speaking off that, what the goal for a graduate student is, that degree completion and graduation, how can graduate students set themselves apart and market themselves for future careers, whether it be in academia or not?
Well, I think part of that has to do with what your goal is once you get done with your doctorate. So to kind of build on what we were talking about with publishing is only one pot of that. If you're an academic and your goal is to go into the professorate, publishing is not the only thing you're going to do, right? We work at an R1, but that's not the only thing that we do. Teaching is also just as important. So if you know you want to work at a teaching school, heck, if you want to work at an R1, you need to make sure that that teaching bucket is also just as robust as your research bucket. You want to make sure that you're doing things that communicate that you're going to be, a good colleague. And those are things that, those kind of soft skills are something that translate across disciplines, across professions, outside the academy, inside the academy. I think figuring out where you want to go is such a great piece of advice, because then you can spend your time working towards that. You can always do more if you decide that that changes, or do less if that changes. But attending to all of the buckets is what's going to be the most successful for you. So don't just focus on one thing. Make sure you're getting all of them together.
Thanks for that. I also encourage students to think about their brand. And way back when I was in graduate school, I had no concept of my personal brand. And so I think now I encourage particularly students in social work to start thinking about their professional brand, their personal brand, and to use that to connect with other researchers, other scholars, to really disseminate their own work. So instead of, just talking about, what we ate today, also talk about those papers you're writing or those projects you're writing, attending amazing events like this, and just kind of starting to get your name out there, so that those who are across the world essentially get to know who you are before it's time to start talking about employment or other research opportunities. So I would say, and I think the graduate school at one point had some classes or a workshop, I remember, about branding and your professional brand. So I would think about that across all the different social media platforms, to be intentional about your professional brand.
Just some other practical advice as well. As you get closer to going to the job market, maybe about 2 years before you go on if you're a PhD student, and I know this is like a long way away, I suppose, for many of you, but that's when you begin to compile the materials for that process. You really have to start about 24 months, sorry, math, 24 months beforehand. There's form letters, there's genres of things that you can learn how to do, teaching philosophies, letters of application, various statements of this, that, and the other, your diversity statement. There's a lot of things that are required, and there's more and more of them. There's lots of advice on this stuff. You can go to the library and check out a book on applying for graduate school, and they tell you how to do each one of these tasks. Again, it comes down to writing it well. You're going to have to redraft it lots and lots of times, but that's something that you can start early, and then share those documents with your advisors and so on. So that's just a practical piece of advice. It comes a little earlier than you think is all I mean to say.
I think you also have to take advantage of presenting your work at conferences and those sorts of things, and doing a lot of networking there. And quite often, your advisor can help you with that and introducing you to people. I work in a discipline of which nationally there are only 30,000 of us out of roughly 3 million engineers in the entire country. So 30,000 people. So our network is very small. So every one of these meetings that we go to, it's really important, the impression that you make through your presentation skills, or just through the discussions with the leaders in your field, and you will see them. And so that's really, in my career, been the most important thing as far as building my brand. Now the LinkedIn page really matters. So making sure that you have something that adequately portrays you, your skills, and the things that you're doing is really important, and can open avenues for you that you might not even conceive of right now.
Such great advice. I don't have much to add, except I want to drive home the notion that public speaking is very integral, along with writing, to all of our disciplines. And so practice giving talks, and that's something you can start really early, depending on the discipline. I know in my department, the graduate students are forming a seminar series, and we're going to be inviting students as early as their second year to start giving talks. Your first talk will be terrible, but it's better to give a terrible talk in your second year of graduate school than it is in your first job talk 6 years down the road. Spoken from experience.
I'll add to that. It's also good to give a bad talk in a group meeting or with your peers, and really, you could form a group of peers here to give talks to. And, when you're practicing those things, urge your peers to be rough. to prepare you so that you're never rattled in any other stage of presentation giving in a professional setting. So I could go on I have a lot of stories from my own time, a lot.
And I just wanted to share a quick resource I thought about as you were sharing as well. The university allows not only faculty members, but graduate students to create their own website, people.ua.edu. So that could be the beginning of your kind of professional presence, so to speak, and it's a free site for graduate students. So people.ua.edu through the university. So you can begin, that could be a place that you start to gather all the work that you're gonna do over the years in your program.
So switching gears a little bit to talk about teaching assistantships. What's the best way for a graduate student to potentially find a teaching assistantship? What are some of the requirements that go along with that? But then also, more specifically with office hours, how does that work for a graduate student who might not be familiar with that?
I think this is sort of like research, where it differs depending on the discipline that you're in. In our program, most of our graduate students have a teaching assistantship, and most of them are affiliated with public speaking, so I appreciate the call for that. That's my department. Miranda does a lot of work with that program too. Yeah. If your offer comes with a teaching assistantship, you don't have to just jump in alone. You're gonna have a lot of guidance, at least in my program. I'll only speak for mine. We've got a basic course director, an assistant basic course director. Each of our courses that graduate students could teach has some kind of course director. So we don't just say, hey, okay, today you're gonna be, or this semester, you're gonna be teaching research methods. Bye. We don't do that. We believe in really helping you, just like with research, helping you figure out how to be a good, effective teacher, because that's gonna help you get jobs, at least in my discipline. That's equally as important as your research is whether or not you're a good educator. In terms of office hours, you mean hosting office hours?
Yes, hosting and then you all hosting.
Yes, I mean, I guess if you have a teaching assistantship, hopefully you have an office space, or it could be a shared office, it could be a singular office, I guess, if you're really lucky. Students may or may not attend those office hours, but just knowing that you're there seems to provide them some comfort. I guess I would say make sure that you remember to have them. There's nothing worse than my office is on the floor with our doctoral students and seeing random students looking for their instructor who's not there during their office hours. I can't help you, you're not in my class. So make sure you have those, make sure you're always there, because we do check, and that is part of your assistantship and is part of the job. So, and most of the time you're just kind of sitting there by yourself. I'm gonna be honest with you, you are, and that's okay.
I wanted to say something about why teaching assistantships are kind of a phenomenally good thing for you. And that is the fact that you don't really know anything until you teach it. You will probably realize when you start teaching somebody something that you're going to go through a lot of reorganizing your knowledge, particularly for your undergraduate, even your basic knowledge in the discipline, something that you give for absolutely obvious. But when you have to explain it to somebody, especially to somebody that doesn't understand it necessarily, for instance, in office hours and so on, you'll be forced to twist your brains into new shapes. And that will be phenomenally helpful for your own understanding of the discipline. So the teaching assistantship is not just essentially what keeps the lights on, which it is, and it's important for that, but it is also an integral part of the graduate learning experience, because it is quite astonishingly and painfully true that you won't really know something until you will have successfully taught it to somebody else. So take it as an opportunity is what I'm trying to say.
I'm just going to add a few little things. A teaching assistantship really eats into your time for your research, and it really stresses your time. So what I would suggest is you're going to have these office hours, you're going to do the readings, you're going to be grading, but if you're, depending on your discipline, and in certain humanities fields, you'll end up teaching your own class as the teacher of record for as well. So you really have to get efficient and good at those things. And I think the way to get good is to treat it seriously early. Like get some skills in grading quickly. Use a timer you know, like a 15-minute egg timer, so you can get down that 30-minute grading paper to 15 minutes, to maybe down to 10 when you get really good at it, because you'll need to speed those things up when you've got a lot of students. You won't have, so talk to people about tips for that. Talk to people in your department who have done it a long time about how to get things done more efficiently for yourself, so you can preserve time for yourself. Okay, thanks.
I would also suggest that you have a faculty member that will, whether it's your advisor or someone else, ask them to come in and do an observation. If your department would allow that, I think that's helpful to get some feedback from someone who's, you know, will sit through a session or lecture or whatever you're doing and allow them to just kind of give you some critical feedback, things that you need to work on. Also there, as we've talked about before, there are tons of resources just on the teaching side in terms of learning to teach and learning to be effective and efficient with your teaching. I think they're, depending on the options you have in terms of your courses, I think there's a graduate teaching certificate program here on campus where you can actually take a number of courses that are teaching you about teaching. There's an online teaching certificate. You may have an opportunity to teach online, so there's some, through our College of Continuing Studies, there's another certificate program that's online that can kind of teach you what it means to the pedagogy about teaching online. So just take advantage of those kinds of opportunities and resources if you have the bandwidth within your programs to do so.
I want to come back to office hours, and in saying this, I don't want to scare you, but whether you're an instructor of record for your own class or you're a TA in a large lecture class, students are often going to find you more approachable than the faculty. For reasons I can't understand, students find me intimidating. So they're going to often go to the graduate student, you, and they're nominally coming about something in class, but they're often going to be bringing personal baggage with them because they're not being educated in a vacuum. They're human beings with stuff going on in their lives, which is affecting their performance in the class. So they're coming to you to talk about maybe why they're not doing good in class. It's going to spill over into their personal lives. And you just need to be prepared for that. Because if you're at all a good teacher, eventually a student's going to trust in you. Something simple that I had to learn in graduate school, I kept a box of Kleenex in my office because I would have women students come in and start crying. First time that happened, I'm sitting there going, My office mate, Sarah, bless her heart, came walking in, handed me a box of Kleenex and walked out again. So after that, I always made sure I had a box of Kleenex. Be prepared for something that you can't handle. A student is going to confess sexual harassment, sexual assault, drug problems, family crises, mental health problems. It's not your job to solve these problems. But if you know that there are resources available, and there are, you can hook the student up with some of these resources. This is a great thing to take to the chair of your department. At least in my department, this is the kind of thing I want my graduate students to come to me with, because they don't know what the resources are, but as chair, also your graduate director, should know what kinds of resources are available that you can take to the students who are coming to you with problems.
Kind of speaking off that, one of the most important things is a graduate student could easily deal with a situation of burnout, but we want to make sure students are obviously maximizing their opportunities that they have here, also finding a balance between personal life and academic studies. Is there any advice that you have to find that balance, to make sure that students can maximize the 1 or plus years that they spend here?
When you find out, let me know.
Yeah, I think you've actually been given a number of good pieces of advice, right? Remembering to schedule time for yourself, knowing what your boundaries are for doing extra things on top of what you need to do, and like really assessing kind of where you're at right now, assessing what your skills are, what your level is. So I think you've actually gotten a really good skill set to start. If you don't have a planner, I would say go buy one and use it.
And I think we're still trying to figure it out too. I mean, honestly, it's one of those things that, at least for me, I'm constantly trying. Every semester, at the beginning of the semester, I'm thinking about, okay, how do I, what kinds of things do I want to spend my time doing? how do I take care of myself a little bit better? How do I say no a little bit more? So it's hard to do. And so, I certainly don't have all the answers. So I'll say it's a work in progress, right? If you don't do it as well as you want to do it the first semester, try again the next semester, and you continue to learn yourself and what works for you and what makes sense for you is what I think about often, even as it relates to myself and how I navigate these things.
Now, this question might be a little specific, but one question we got asked was, how can master's students get involved in research prior to embarking on their doctoral program?
Well, this is again probably very discipline specific, but for instance, in the department in chemistry, we have master's tracks that involve research, and it would be students would probably be welcome to talk to a faculty member and see if there's mutual interest in pursuing some research. The faculty member will probably propose a research plan that is appropriate for the kind of time that a master's student has, which is very different from what a PhD student has, but it is done routinely. So I don't think, I wouldn't say that it would be a problem given the right framework.
See who your faculty are, and then go talk to them. Most of them probably would be really excited to chit chat with you about what research you could be doing, what research they're doing that you might be excited about. So just figure out who is in your department, look at their websites, those people pages are very handy, and then go talk with them.
That's right. I think when you're looking at your class schedule of the classes you want to take, this goes back to going back to office hours that professors have. But the same thing applies to classes. Map out the professors that are in the area. Get on the website, make sure you know the professors in your department, what they do, what area they're in. And if you're interested in working in that area, take their class and make sure you take their class. And if you have to do it as an independent study or whatever it is down the line, make sure that you line up your interests with the people in the department that are expertise in that area. And again, a lot of this does depend on discipline. So in the humanities, there are different tracks where some people are expected to publish their work and then others might not do a thesis instead, and so on and so forth. And there's not necessarily an intellectual hierarchy in that at all, just to be clear about that. Either approach is fine. But I think reaching out to the professors that you're in the areas that you're interested in is pretty important to get your research off the ground.
Now, we have students joining us obviously in person, but then there's also a good number of students joining us virtually. Is there any advice that you have for students that might be participating in their graduate program online?
I would say stay connected as well. I know for social work, we're really intentional about trying to engage our distant students. And so with events that we have on campus, we often have an opportunity for our online students to participate. And so I would say be present. Similar advice that we've given already, I would also suggest that you reach out, get to know the faculty. Faculty want to hear from you, whether you're on campus or at a distance. You can schedule a virtual meeting with a faculty member to discuss their interest or your research interest. So I would just say connect, get engaged, be intentional, just as campus students are. You may not be physically present, but you can be engaged and be present. I think it's just reaching out and it's using a different modality, but you can still have similar great opportunities as the campus students have.
Perhaps one of the few silver linings of the COVID era is the fact that we are all much more capable of dealing with virtual environments than we were a year and a few months ago. So in that sense, I think you will probably find a more responsive audience to your requests for a virtual meeting, for reaching out, kind of cold calling faculty, trying to setting up a meeting and things of that nature.
I'm not, this is a tough one because my primary department, we don't have any a virtual degree option. But the two departments that I'm adjunct in do. And the only advice I can give you is you have a thesis committee, use them. underutilized resource. And part of a way of using them is, and virtually is great, is just having a regular meeting with them to keep them up to date with what you're doing and what you're thinking. Maybe once a month or so. Spend an hour or less just giving them an update and saying, hey, this is where I think I'm going with this this aspect of the research. What are your thoughts on this? Frankly, as a committee member, we love it because we're engaged. Quite often, that doesn't happen. It's just your thesis advisor, and the rest of the committee is kind of an afterthought. I think that's one way that you can really help yourself, especially if you're in a distance degree. Another thing is with the distance degrees is just a lot of patience. You're working full-time usually. You're doing school at night, or you're trying to squeeze it in with work if you're with a company that allows you to do that sort of thing. And gosh, it's tough. And so patience is something that you're going to have to really demonstrate in order to get it all done without driving yourself crazy.
And we're in the final stretch of our questions, so we're going to ask just a couple more questions. One thing that we got was, obviously we want graduate students to be successful, but how do you measure success beyond just grades?
Well, I would say that probably for students that are involved in research, I would say the grades are actually a relatively small portion of success. I would say that their research success, their dissemination, their publication are a much larger achievement for graduate students that are involved in that kind of coursework, in that kind of course. So this goes back to what we were discussing at the beginning. Remember that even your discoveries are only important if they are shared. So you're going to want to have plans for dissemination early and often. Doesn't have to be a paper. Presentations are great. They will build your public speaking confidence. They will force you to think about things, particularly about your project that you may not have thought about. And questions are important too, because they might raise your awareness to points that you had overlooked.
I would say if whatever the goals are that you're setting, are you meeting those goals? And I'm a huge fan of outcomes, so did you get a job where you wanted to be? Like, I don't just mean a job is good. I want all my students to get jobs, but if you're striving for a job at the CDC, did you get a job at the CDC? Fantastic. Did you get a job at Alabama Public Health Department? Awesome. All right, for me, this is a stepping stone in your professional path. And so if your outcome is to become a professor, did we do enough to help you get that job? If your goal is to work at the NIH, did we do enough to help you get that job? So I'm looking at those smaller milestones as we go throughout to get you to that ultimate goal of where is it that you want to be after you finish here? Because this is just, 2 years, 1 year, 3, 4, 5 years of your life, but this isn't your end spot unless I guess you get a job here. But otherwise, this isn't the end. So I'm looking at what do we do to get you to where you want to be next.
I think I'll just add one thing from the perspective of the humanities, and I'm sure it applies in other disciplines beyond that as well. But I would take seriously what you care about as an intellectual, as you're cultivating your own research agenda, that you're doing something that you care about. That when you're choosing your seminar to paper topics, that you don't just select what's coming from the class necessarily, but you know why you're choosing what you're choosing and what you think about it. And this can be particularly important in the humanities, to begin to sort of develop your intellectual character across those years so that you know why you're writing and researching what you're doing, how it functions for you, why those ideas matter. And spending some time to take that seriously, take yourself seriously, and not think that you have to simply follow paths that have already been there, but that you can push against them based on the kinds of experience you've had or based on the kinds of ideas that you've got. So taking yourself seriously at the start, I think, is worthwhile, and designing your projects based around that conviction, I think is important. Yeah.
All right, and this one's going to be a two-parter, our final question. What is one misconception or one mistake that you or what you've seen of a graduate student has made within their program? And the second into that, what advice do you have to either make sure that they don't make that mistake again, or just general advice to be successful from that mistake in graduate school? So, one mistake or misconception, and how can we mitigate the risk of that?
I have one mistake. I'm sorry. It's just checking out. Like, if something's not going right for you, and you then, out of shame, don't contact your committee or don't talk to people, you get frozen, and then it like compounds into more shame, and then you don't want to face anyone. That can happen sometimes, and I would just encourage you, if you feel that happening, like burst through it, go talk to your committee, go tell them where you're at, start having conversations again about what you're working on, and it'll free you up of that. It's easy to sort of trap yourself, and then your progress freezes. Don't let that happen to you. I think that would be a mistake to avoid.
I think one of the mistakes I've seen, thankfully not often, but sometimes students get involved in the politics of a department, and it causes them to lose focus on the reason why they're there and their research and their work. So I would say, and would strongly encourage you not to be pulled into any departmental politics, and stay focused on your role, your work, what you're there for, so that you're successful and you get to where you're trying to go. It's one thing of advice I would share.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that. Only focus on things that you can control. Stay away from things that you have no control over. It'll save you a lot of stress and anguish and all those sorts of things. I can't say that enough. We all have stories about that.
Yes.
I want to share a bit of advice which applies very much in academia, but I learned this in the business world before going to graduate school. I worked for a few years professionally. But translating what I learned in the business world to the academic context, you can piss off your advisor. You can even piss off the department chair and survive academically. If you piss off your department's lead secretary, your academic career might be over. Okay, we all laugh, but it is really true that I did this myself professionally before going to graduate school. I've seen students make this mistake. They adopt this hierarchical view, and professors, advisor, the chair, these are important people and I've got to be good to them, but staff, well, I can treat staff the same way I treat the waitress down at Starbucks. And I mean, first of all, that's just offensive to their human dignity, but also these women, and they are mostly women, are absolutely central to the smooth running of the department. And particularly the graduate secretary is going to be absolutely essential to the smooth running of your graduate career. Treat them with respect, get to know them, honor the deadlines that they set, respond to their emails. That will do your career as much good as anything else you can do.
This might be discipline specific, so if it doesn't apply to your discipline, then I guess just ignore it. I think the sciences might say this is different from them. But since you're just starting your doctoral program, your master's program, figure out what it is you're interested in doing, and don't feel the pressure to do what your advisor does just because that's what your advisor does. This is the starting of your career. I've seen too many graduate students who say, well, my advisor does, this work with smoking, so I have to do smoking too. No, you don't. If you don't like smoking, then don't study smoking. Smoking is bad. But if you don't like smoking, don't study that. Don't study something just because you're I would love it if my graduate students study what I study. I study death. They don't all study death. It's sad. I want them to. But that's not good for them because they have to figure out what they want to do in their career. And this is where they begin to start to make the name for themselves. And it's super easy to feel that pressure to do exactly what they do, methods-wise or topic-wise or theory-wise. don't fall into that path, because then you run into those people 5, 10 years later, and they're super unhappy with their jobs because they just found themselves spending, 5, 6, 7 years doing something they absolutely hate. So figure out what it is you want to do, and then find the people who will support you to do that for the career that you're developing. But it might be different depending on the discipline.
Yeah, because I can't, I'm like a cat. I can't remember what happened a second ago. I can't remember exactly the question, but when you were making your comment, something that struck me is there are different types of advisors too. So it goes back to something that was said early on, is if you haven't, in our discipline, we hire you. So we figure out whether our personalities match and our working styles and all those things match before we hire you. And I realize that some disciplines bring you here and then you seek out the advisor. But you have hands-off advisors that present you with a project that you can develop into your own. You have meticulous micromanaging advisors that will micromanage every little aspect of what you're doing. So, probably the biggest, that advisor decision, if it hasn't been made already, is the most important decision you're going to make in your graduate career. So think very carefully about it and make sure that you and that person you're going to work with get along well, that your personalities mesh. Your graduate advisor they're your advisor, they're another parent, they're a friend, all of that. And you need to be able to, you've got to be able to converse with them in a way that's, I would almost call it not natural. I can't think of the words right now, but that decision is so important, so make it a good one. And if it's not working, and you realize that early on, talk with that advisor. Maybe you need to part ways. That happens, and that's just really good advice I can give. There's a book on this, and I can't remember the name of it. It's a shareware or a freeware book on the graduate student advisor relationship that's out there. Gosh, I can't remember the name right now, but I'll get that to Andy because there's a lot of good advice in that.
I think that's perfect. Panelists, thank you so much for I know we might not have been able to hit every single question, but as you continue to think of questions, or if we weren't able to hit your questions, reach out to your graduate program advisor and director, and be sure that you ask those questions, because we want to make sure that you're successful here. And asking those questions is an important part, whether here or once you leave the orientation today. But thank you all again for being here. Now I'm going to pass it back over to Quinn Kelly.
So as we move on to our student panel, I'm going to allow you to take a very short break at your seat by standing up and stretching and doing whatever you need to do. That was a very long panel, but great information. Thank you again to the faculty. Our Twitter is y'all will sit over to how this is.
You sure it's cool I still go?
Is that what?
You sure it's cool I still go?
Yes.
Don't want to miss anything. I don't know. I guess I'll take the map, guys.
Please make your way back to your seats. If you can hear me snap once, if you can hear me snap twice, you can hear me snap 3 times. If you can hear me, give me a roll tide. There we go. You're never gonna get tired of the roll tide, I promise. So as with the last panel, the number for questions is on the screen, and I will allow the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Ms. Burns.
Hi, I am Marie Burns. I'm a second-year master's student in the Composition, Rhetoric, and English Studies program through the English department. I'm from Galveston, Indiana. I did my undergrad here at UA, so I'm entering my 5th year here in Tuscaloosa. I'll be teaching English 101 this fall, and I'm currently the Vice President for Communications of the Graduate Student Association.
Hi everyone. For those of you I didn't have the pleasure of meeting in the hallway, my name is Alexis Cumby from Birmingham, Alabama. I am a second-year master's student studying communication studies, and I'm also the chief of staff for the Graduate Student Association, and I'm so glad to have y'all here.
Hi everyone, my name is Miranda Rouse. I am going into my 3rd year in the Communication and Information Sciences doctoral program. I am the executive assistant to the Graduate Student Association, and I look forward to meeting more of you once the panel is over.
See, that happens. Hello, everybody. I'm Janat. I'm a currently doctoral student at the College of Communication and Information Science. I'm in 3rd year, and I'm originally from Bangladesh, so I'm an international student. Get to know you all, and I'll see you more and know you more. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer Bagget. I'm an aerospace engineering PhD student starting the 4th year, and I also teach classes in the aerospace department. So look forward to meeting more of you as well.
Hello again, everyone. My name is Royce Dickerson. I am an MBA candidate from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm looking forward to getting to know you all through our engagement through GSA, where I serve as the Executive Vice President.
Great, so a segue from the academic panel to the student panel. What is your favorite place to study on campus? Where is your favorite place to study on campus? None of you study on campus?
My favorite place to study on campus is actually the same place where Dr. James Mcnaughton recommended studying. It's the 6th floor of Gorgas. It is the silent floor, so no one talks up there, and you just sit in your cubicle and you do your work for 5 hours, and then you go home and watch TV and chill out.
Mine actually is in the office space provided by the department. There's primarily 2 of us in there, so you can kind of set up everything like you like it, and you have everything there for like the department computer, and a lot of my stuff is computational, so kind of our lab space is also our office space. So it's kind of a good environment in terms of just creating your own set space the way you want.
For me, me, it's the same. I study at the office provided by the department, but mostly I study at the Gorgas because it closes at 12 and I can see people there, so I don't feel alone. You know, when you study, you feel alone. And other than sometimes I also study cafe, like in Ferguson Center, you can see there is a Starbucks, so where you can study sometime. That should be me.
I like to study in the place where I don't have classes at, and so I'm more of an outside studier, and I'll usually use either the quad, somewhere out there, not right now because it's too hot, or somewhere outside of Wood Squad to study.
Great. How do you stay organized in graduate school?
I'll take this one. I am a strong believer in a Google Calendar, now an Outlook calendar. I tell people all the time, if it's not on my calendar and I don't show up, that's why. So my advice is get a Google Calendar, and also some people are a big fan of physical planners as well.
Any other methods? Sure.
Yeah, so to go along with that, I will say that for myself, if I physically write things out, it helps me to remember things. So in addition to having electronic calendar, like Alexis said, having a physical planner as well, and just making sure that those actually look the same, and that you aren't just putting it in one place, but in multiple places. And then at the beginning of the day, what I always do is create a to-do list. So I have like a long standing to-do list, and in my notes on my iPhone, you can check off things, and so that's what I do, and I start my day out and say, what do I need to get done, and then what could I potentially get done? So I have like mandatory things that I have to do, and then also things that I could potentially work towards as well. But you just have to really set up, think about your deadlines as well. If you know you've got 3 papers due on one day, well then figure out when you're going to write each one, because you can't do them all the night before, right? So you've got to think about all of that stuff and just really try to plan ahead. As tedious as it is, it's going to be really helpful.
I think for me, it's not just where you place things on your calendar, whether it's Google Calendar or a planner, but it's how you place things on your calendar. I like things going back to back to back, to maximize time, but it's the gap in between that time that I require of myself to be able to make sure that I'm ready for the next thing. Being able to prioritize everything you do throughout the day where you're not overlapping, but also one of the most important things that I do is set reminders. So if someone asks me to do something, I say, hey Siri, remind me at 6 o'clock to do this, because it just makes it easier. And I don't want to trust myself when I can trust something that I paid for.
For me, I use both, just like others, but also I use extra things to remind me. Let's say I put this sticker, different color on top of my laptop screen, so when I open it, what's my priority? Maybe I didn't do that today, so it's like I remind myself, must do it. This is the thing you need to do no matter what today. So I just use some very much, I don't think so it's a trigger word, but also kind of just remind me that this is the thing that you must do. So that's the thing, but of course, rather than only the electronic, I would say always keep a notebook. It really helps you out because sometimes you cannot, electronic things, you cannot get notifications. Sometimes it can happen. So you open your book, it's more focused. You stay focused, okay. Maybe you can use different color pen just to figure that out. This is less priority, this is more priority, something like that.
For those of you who are teaching this year, I really recommend a teacher planner. They have some great ones at Target. That's where I got mine. It's really helpful to plan out lessons, take attendance, and record grades. I like to record my grades by hand and then put them in the computer just so I have a physical copy in case things go wrong, because technology is not always the most reliable. And it also, my teacher planner also doubles as my personal planner as well. So I have everything in one place, so I'm not keeping 2 different planners, or a notebook, a planner, and a Google Calendar as well.
To piggyback off of that, just really quickly as well,
it's helpful for me because I teach too, is that I put due dates for my students in my calendars as well, because then that helps you to know what you need to prepare your students for. And it's just on your brain, but then also you've got to think about putting in time for grading as well, and that has to go into your calendar. And that's not necessarily stuff that might be on your mind currently, but you got to think about, you know, lesson planning as well. All of that stuff takes time.
And I've found it helpful to have a master schedule throughout the week and the day. So the things that you have to do every day to maintain your person is also important outside of your duties. So make sure that you are scheduling time to eat. Make sure that you are scheduling time to go outdoors, to walk our beautiful campus and do other things while you are staying on task throughout the semester. That being said, what is the best coffee shop in Tuscaloosa?
I'll take this one. In my opinion, the best coffee shop is now Heritage House. A little problematic because some people either have Heritage House or Monarch, so people go back and forth, but I have been converted and I am Team Heritage House.
We have an endorsement from the audience. Any other?
I'm gonna oppose you on that one. Personally, I love Monarch because during my undergrad, and hopefully it'll make a return this year, the English department always does pure products. It's an English department reading series, first Thursday of every month. It usually has a theme as well. And so all the English nerds gather in the back patio of Monarch and we read nonfiction, fiction, creative writing, whatever you want to bring in. So yeah, sorry I'm biased, but.
I don't drink coffee, so I base my coffee shops on if they have food and the quality of the furniture. And for me, that's UPerk. So UPerk is really good food, really great furniture. So if you want coffee, they have that too. But beyond that, they have some pretty good sandwiches.
So we're gonna have to have an Instagram poll to see what the best coffee shop is, so participate in that. What do you wish you knew before beginning your first year here? They knew it all.
So I'm a first generation college student, and one of the biggest things for me, like the faculty talked a lot about this, is imposter syndrome, and not really understanding how willing faculty and staff and administrators really are to talk to you and give you advice. Especially with the COVID format last year, it was a little bit harder to just pop into someone's office hours, but now that we are back in person, my advice is, even if you don't really have anything to talk about, just stop in there for 5 minutes and ask how their day is going, ask them for advice, and build that relationship and cultivate it, and I think it'll work out really well for you.
I think one of my big ones is don't forget to check out the resources before you start, because a lot of them, like the library offers a lot of free ebooks, all of the journal article sources. You just put in the title and the author that you're looking for, and the library staff also, like all of the librarians, each of the departments has a specific librarian that's also tied to each of the departments, so make sure to utilize those. A lot of people forget about that opportunity. And then check out the software options too. Like sometimes when you're in the middle of the classes and then you're downloading the options for the software at the end, like don't be afraid to check out all of the resources before you start.
I think for me, coming to Alabama from out of state, like a lot of you are, I had no idea about anything with the university. And so one thing that I had to learn quickly was that I wasn't alone. That there's a lot of people that experience the same struggles, the same questions, and have some of the same feelings about coming to a larger institution. And so knowing your resources and who you can ask questions to, but also finding a community here where you can make this place feel as small as you want it, was really one of the most important parts for me to realize and learn early on, because it is hard, being in a new place, being in a new program, and being able to find those people and find those resources. Whether in your program or outside of your program, it was definitely one of the first things that I had to figure out quickly.
One other thing I forgot to to mention, which really caused some problems my freshman year, is make sure if you're traveling off campus, if you're coming from off campus, make sure that you know the train schedule so you can search it. So I know that we just built a bridge to help you bypass that, but it depends on what side of campus you're trying to get to. But the trains may stop you. So before you leave the house, research if the train is on the way there, figure out your route so you can get to class on time.
Absolutely. Are there student clubs that grad students can join?
Well, for starters, the Graduate Student Association. We
I
cannot
was waiting
stress that
on
enough.
somebody.
I wouldn't say student club, but then again, you can join their multicultural organization, I think, for students. And also based on your own country, they have clubs. So all the students are there. And also if you're an international student, as I'm international, so if you're an international student, you can join ISA. That's a very good research to get more connected. Also, I think department also has some small group of organization. It depends on department to department.
If you are looking for a student organization, we have what's called The Source. It's located on the 3rd floor of the Ferguson Student Center, and also they have a website. It has a list of every student organization that exists on campus. You can filter it based on your preferences, and also you can filter it based off of classifications. If you're a PhD student looking for other PhD students who are interested in poetry, then you can enter and take that quiz, and it'll send you all that information as well.
And then on top of that, hosted by The Source is an event they have every year called Get On Board Day. This is something you're either going to hear about it beforehand or you're just going to see it when you're walking around campus, because it's hundreds of tables with people going out, giving out information about groups on campus. And so just like we have the resource fair, it's like that times 100, where you can find resources, get plugged in, and make connections with people on campus. And that'll be, so you have Wednesday, first day of classes. The next day is that Thursday. It'll be a week after that Thursday. So be sure to stop by the Ferguson Center, because there'll be lots of events going on in and around that.
And there will be free food at Get On Board Day.
What is a typical day like for a graduate student, for you?
Okay, so a little disclaimer. I haven't had a real normal day in grad school because of the pandemic. But somewhat of a normal day for me is getting up, eating breakfast, taking care of my dog, making sure I have all of my materials before I leave my apartment, making sure I have a charged up laptop is very important, pens, that I have expo markers because I like to write on the board when I teach. I'll go to campus, I'll go teach first, and then I have a couple hours in between teaching and then going to my actual class. So I will spend time either grading papers, doing my own work, or having lunch. Usually I'll have lunch and do one other thing. And then, I'll go to my class, make sure I have my assignment done for that. And then I will usually go home and have dinner, but I always like to carve out some time to go hang out with my friends. Your cohort will really become your best friends, really. At least it has in my experience. And if you are into bingo, there are so many bingo places at the bars in town. Like, you could probably go to bingo every single night of the week. So if you're not one to really put yourself out there, try and push yourself out there, especially with your cohort, because they're in the same place as you are. Y'all probably have pretty much the same interests, and just, take those interests off campus out into Tuscaloosa, explore the town that we all love so much a little bit, and enjoy your grad school experience as much as possible.
Speaking of bars and bingo, are there any good bars that graduate students hang out together where we're not surrounded by undergrads? By our students?
Alcove. Alcove is one of them. I'm going to give you a personal plug. I bartend at Hotel Indigo on the Lookout Rooftop Bar. Please come see me.
I did not know you bartended. Wow.
We will be there tomorrow.
Yes. Tuesdays, karaoke night. If you sing a song on theme, you get a free drink. really any over 21 bar, you won't have the issue of seeing your students either.
If you're more of a beer drinker, Druid City Brewing Company is a pretty good graduate and then professional level bar downtown. Session's a good one, but the undergrads are starting to come there too. Session.
We'll send you some bar recommendations.
Yeah, so a lot of the bars are located on what we call the Strip. It's like you can walk there from campus. Those are usually where a lot of the undergraduates hang out. As long as you go beyond that, chances are you're going to run into some graduate students. So stay away from the Strip if you don't want that, except they do have lots of bingo and they do have Wine Wednesday, which is a crowd favorite no matter where you are. So.
Where are the best places to buy or borrow textbooks?
So I get a lot of my textbooks from Amazon too, but the library also you can rent or check out the textbooks that a lot of the classes have. A lot of times teachers will put them kind of on like library loan, so they'll kind of reserve them from the beginning. So they'll already have a couple of copies placed aside for those that want to use the library for their textbooks. But a lot of the textbooks, like we mentioned before with resources, you can get ebook copies of them for free. So a lot of teachers will specifically pick textbooks that the library utilizes those resources from. So you can end up getting a lot of the textbooks for free from that resource. But that's probably the two main ones.
Definitely before you go buy any textbooks, do a little bit of research online to see if you can find a PDF online or an ebook through our library system. And then if worse comes to worse, you can always buy it used. I always use Better World Books. It's a great used book website, very reasonable prices. Amazon, Chegg, and then last resort is obviously the soup store.
Yeah, so one thing about the soup store, it is pretty much the most expensive option. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but what they do offer at the end of the semester is they do a book buyback program. So keep your books in good shape and you can sell it back to them.
Great. Have you had any internships and did you find them to be fruitful?
I had a virtual internship with the United States Department of State with the Global Community Liaison Office, and I actually managed to get that position through UA. I started it when I was an undergrad, and it continued on when I became a graduate student. But it was just in a departmental email that was sent out to everyone on a listserv, and I applied for it, interviewed for it, and then a month later I got my position, and it's been one of the best experiences, and I have a nice little recommendation letter from the Secretary of State. Really cool. Fun fact. So I really recommend always read your emails, even if they don't include the words fundraising or free food.
As for internship, I do, like it's my observation, sometimes it depends on subject to subject. Let's say your department website has some opportunities for their own students that where you can find actually internship. That's what I saw in our department. Other than, I don't know about that much about this STEM program, but in social science, it's always talk to your advisor if you are looking for internship, and they may guide you how to get an internship for sure.
I interned in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, and that was only made possible through the university. The Career Center provided a stipend and scholarship to pay for housing as well as transportation costs and coffee as well. So if you are interested in having an internship, definitely set up a meeting with the Career Center. We all have access to it, and some of you all's programs have specific Career Centers meant for you.
That is kind of similar in the STEM fields too, like kind of what they mentioned earlier with befriending the secretaries. They send out a lot of emails for internship opportunities as well as job opportunities from when you finish your program, or even kind of communicating with the national organizations if you're in something like aerospace or materials or chemistry or biology. So they have opportunities that they send out where the professors have contacts in those regions, so they'll send you emails from that, and you can actually get contacts from the other professors in your departments to get internship opportunities from that, whether that be national organizations or industry partners.
How do you deal with a faculty member that you don't get along with? It's okay.
Just stay away from them.
It's my advice too.
I can talk about this. Yeah, unfortunately, I have a little bit of experience with this. But sometimes things just don't work out. So I came to the University of Alabama wanting to work with one specific person, and it just didn't end up working out that way, it's fine. But I will say that it's important that no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, even if you are out downtown, you should always remain on. And what I mean by that is that you have no idea who is looking at you or who you're talking to or who the person you're talking to knows. A lot of people are intertwined here at UA. So someone might work in your department, but they also might have connections in the graduate school or in other departments or in other areas around town. So it's just important to make sure that you keep a good rapport with all people. So no matter what, even if you do need to cut ties with someone that you guys are not working well together, let's say a professor, you're taking their course and things have just gotten into a struggling situation, try to talk it out, work it out, make sure that you end in a good relationship, because again, you never know who they know, you never know if you'll need them again in the future, if they can help you out with future connections, or if they know someone who is going to be involved with your future work.
Absolutely, and a great piece of advice Dean Carvalho gave yesterday was to always de-escalate. So if there is a tensious moment in your department, always de-escalate. Take the lower road. What's your favorite thing to do in Tuscaloosa that isn't on campus? Tuscaloosa is not that bad.
I like to walk on the river walk. That's nice, a nice view. Just enjoy the nature and the river. That's about it, though. I do a lot and I study a lot. I need to spend more time out in the town, but a little bit of nature is all I have to offer.
I love historic downtown Northport. I live about a mile from historic downtown Northport, and that is also where the Kentuck Arts Center is, and they usually do the first Thursday of every month. They have like a community art festival, and they feature artists, they sell beer, they sell pizza. It's a really fun time, and they sell pottery too. It's very small, so it's very doable in just a day to go look at downtown Northport. They have a really good bakery down there, a couple restaurants, cute little kitschy shops. So I highly recommend going and visiting one day.
Most of my free time is spent probably getting food in Tuscaloosa. I don't know how to cook, but I've started HelloFresh, so I'm learning how to cook, kind of. But other than that, my 2 meals that I get delivered a week, I'll spend time either going to local restaurants and enjoying that time there, and then going to a local bar after that, or doing the bar and then the restaurant, just depending on the day.
I would say go for work for sure. As you are in graduate school, you need lots of work and, I don't know, enjoy the nature. That would calm your mind and you will feel peace. I go for biking sometimes because I love biking in the afternoon time. And other than the food, yes, I love food so much. So I always look for, I also cook, but yeah, and recently there is a boba mania. There is a new shop that I've been to. Maybe you can try boba. That's a really good one. So enjoy food and nature. That's all you can do.
You will find a list of museums on the Tuscaloosa Tourism website. There's also the Tuscaloosa Civil Rights Trail, which has just been established in recent years, and it tells the story of civil rights here in Tuscaloosa. Tuscaloosa is a college town, so there are 2 other universities here that may be worth exploring as you journey through your teaching career. Trying to make my city look really good, y'all.
We have a really nice Target. It's out of trash cans right now, I hear, so don't go there if you need a trash can.
And you will run into undergrads.
And campus. This is the football central of the world. And campus, you can find a lot of things to do all over campus, from the Arboretum, the Moundville Museum of Native American History. What am I missing? Anything else on campus? The athletics complex that you can visit, go scale a wall.
No, I think you hit it right. You know, a lot of us will be busy in our programs, and the time that we get to leave that, there's tons of opportunities, whether you know about them or you figure them out on campus or outside of campus. There seems to be always something to do, especially in the fall, because there's just a lot of people on campus. I mean, of course, we have a campus of about 4,000 people total, but on a game day, that could be anywhere from 140,000 or 150,000. So there's a lot of people, a lot of energy on campus. And if you need to get away from that, you know, Tuscaloosa isn't far from a lot of the major cities in the southeast if you have a chance to go on a trip. So tons of stuff to do here, but if you do want to leave, I mean, it's not far to get away if you want to.
Tuscaloosa is 3 hours from anywhere. That's what I always tell people. Where's the best place to take family to dinner, or the best place for a date?
I had my graduation dinner at Chuck's Fish. It was excellent, great alcohol, great food, great appetizers, great atmosphere. That's where I take my parents when I come into town, because not only do I love them and I like to show them Tuscaloosa, I also like it when they pay and buy me a nice meal.
I don't know this from too much personal experience, but a great place that a date would be nice at is River. It's on the river, right off of Jack Warner, and it's a great place to go for dinner. But also one special thing where you'll see me at least probably once every 3 weeks is they have great brunch on Saturdays and Sundays. A lot of people like to go to Another Broken Egg, and I don't like going to Another Broken Egg, and if you love it, that's okay. But right next door is River, and they have a great atmosphere, great menus, and you get to see the river and sit out there and enjoy that. So I love going there. They have some really great drinks too.
Speaking of River, any tips for managing life on a graduate student budget? River's not that bad.
River's not on it.
I am a huge fan of Aldi. It is a grocery store that's right before, there we go. It's the grocery store that's right before Target. Target is wonderful and lovely, but it's pricey. If you are a person who wants like nice organic vegetables, go to Aldi. They have absolutely everything, and you'll end up spending a check there on accident because everything is so good there.
Housing-wise, there's a lot of options in Tuscaloosa and Northport. Really look around at what you want. I would avoid any student living complexes because they're just going to be astronomically more expensive than you can find a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom unfurnished for. Yeah, you'll have to buy furniture, but then you can have that for the rest of ever. And also on a student, like a graduate stipend, if you want to tutor as well, the Bill Battle Academic Center offers graduate tutors time on top of their assistantship. It's a pretty good hourly rate. It's about $12 to $14 an hour, and they're currently hiring and need all kinds of tutors, especially in psychology and business. So the application is still open. Please apply.
I'm a huge fan. My friends will send me text messages with coupons and deals or alerts for food delivery. Every now and again, food delivery services will do a 50% off or 80% off sale or other things like that. So any other advice?
I would say it never hurts wherever you go, more so for restaurants, just to ask and see if they have a student discount. They may or may not, but you know, if they do, it's great to know about, and if they don't,
try again next time. But one of the things that I also love about a lot of these local places in town have daily or weekly specials, and you kind of get a know-how of what happens on each day. So Mondays, you get 50 cents at Innisfree, or Wednesdays, $5 burger at 5. So kind of go in, ask questions, check their deals, because lots of places have weekly specials just in terms of getting food. Like I said, it's kind of what I do outside of school. So keep up with those, have a nice little list of those, so you know where to go each day.
And in addition to like your monthly expenses, like I know I get a discount for being both a government employee and a teacher on my rent and auto insurance, as well as my phone bill. So definitely take some time to check out if you will get those discounts and make sure that they know you're a University of Alabama employee.
Great. Well, let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you for sharing your Tuscaloosa knowledge. At this time, I want to invite Dr. Andy to come back up, and we are going to pull prizes. Woo!